Okay, thank you. We'll reconvene. And the next item of business is second reading and public hearing of ordinance number 1024, an ordinance amending the Manitou Springs Municipal Code by the addition of a new section 18.04.25 entitled Natural Medicine Business. And Elena, if you would just brief us on the current state, and I think you just do it from there, that'd be fine.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. For the record, Elena Krebs, City Clerk. So in front of you tonight is the ordinance for second reading, public hearing, obviously, of the natural medicine, which the state is anticipating accepting applications at the end of the year. It incorporates what we discussed during our last meeting regarding distance restrictions, so 1,000 feet from school, no buffer from parks, allowed citywide and commercial zones, hours of operation 7 days a week, 8 a.m. through 8 p.m., numeric limitations with a maximum of 4 for healing centers, a maximum of 1 for every other type of licensed facility, and a use by right process. It also incorporates the mixed use commercial zone as recommended by the Planning Commission. So if you have any further questions regarding planning, we do have Chelsea Royston, the senior planner.
Okay, thank you. Council, does anybody want to pursue the planning dimension of this or any other questions for Elena at the moment? Okay, go ahead, Julie.
Elena, what's the difference? Where's the commercial zone as opposed to the mixed use commercial zone district? Can you help me with that?
That's going to be a planning question.
Oh, planning question.
Hi there.
She is.
Chelsea Royston for the record. So that is a kind of nuanced distinction. When the Land Use and Development Code was adopted, a new zoning district of the mixed use commercial was created. It was intended to mimic the URA overlay. And as of right now, we don't have any parcels that are zoned mixed use commercial. And the parcels that would be zoned mixed use commercial would be in areas that are already outlined by the zoning restrictions that you all have asked for. So including the mixed use commercial zone doesn't effectively change the number of parcels that could possibly host one of these businesses. So you're still looking at 88 parcels total, whether it's a combination of commercial or commercial and mixed use.
So is that the same thing as saying that if everything that's zoned commercial right now could also be zoned mixed use commercial in the future? So it's really the same properties? Is that what you're saying?
More or less, the distinction being that areas in the current urban renewal area would be the ones that would be supported as mixed use commercial. So not all commercial.
Which commercial is not mixed use available, for example?
Commercial zoning that is not in the URA.
Where? Oh, not in the URA.
Right.
Okay.
I'm
thanks.
sorry. I practiced how to say this in a less confusing way, and this is
Yeah,
what you ended up with.
Get it, but
I'm sorry.
It might be helpful if you could show us like, oh, here's the street, here's a picture, everything in red. That's the commercial zone. You've got it here in the URA, you've got it there, and then you've got the mixed use, and then we could see the overlay, but we don't have that.
Right, because there are no parcels that are currently zoned mixed use commercial.
So Julie, do you understand that? We have this zone. It's just that nobody has applied to have their property zoned that way.
Yes.
Right. Well, but there is nothing currently zoned that way.
Correct.
But
if it gets zoned, like my house isn't going to get zoned mixed use. That's not going to happen.
I would imagine if
So-
you applied to have it zoned be mixed use, you'd be turned down.
Yeah.
But yes.
So the probable mixed use. Oh, I see. So there's no specific area that's designated.
She's saying
as
there's no parcels
potential-
that has that tag,
Yeah,
but we have it in our code, right? That allows that zoning type.
Right. And typically zone districts can be applied really anywhere in town that makes sense and meets the criteria. However, this zone district is special in that it was designated specifically for areas that are currently in the URA. any rezoning
So
would
that's
come
more
before
the
you all.
intent of the intent in the new land use development code says that we have mixed use and it's intended to be used primarily in the URA parcels, but nobody's ever applied for a change of zone in the URA for that zone. Right, type.
Exactly. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
saying that succinctly.
Thank you. Okay, I'm just,
Okay, great. Okay, other questions for planning or for the city clerk at this point? We will have an opportunity to come back. We will have a public hearing and then if you do have follow-on questions, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Natalie, please.
I don't know that you know the answer to it, but they were talking about it on the radio the other day, and they said that the average cost of a treatment was going to be between $1,000 to $3,000, that that's typically what has been charged in Washington State, and then that's what they're anticipating in Colorado. And I was just wondering, it doesn't impact our bottom line or anything. I was just curious if you'd heard anything about what it might cost.
I have not.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
I can quickly answer.
Good.
They haven't released any sort of what the cost will be for the consumer, but they have released, it's pretty much $3,000 for those licenses that the state is anticipating to charge.
Maybe I misunderstood the conversation.
A
Okay,
question.
Jolie, go ahead.
So am I guessing right? This is not a taxable event. This is a service. So we don't make any money off. of it.
Correct.
Okay. With that, I will open up the public comment portion of this public hearing. So anyone in the audience who would like to speak to this is welcome to do so. And we do have at least one individual, Scott DeWalt, like DeWalt Tools. Okay, if you'll come forward. And gentlemen, okay, so we'll start off. We'll ask you to give us your names and addresses, and then you have 3 minutes each to speak. You wouldn't necessarily, you don't need to repeat yourselves, but, and typically under just the kind of public comment we have early in the meeting on non-agenda items, council doesn't respond, but we may in this case have some back and forth. So anyway, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, and the rest of council. My name is Scott DeWalt, and my address is 206 Cheyenne Boulevard. That's my home address. My work address is 32 Manitou Avenue.
Good evening, council members. I am Kenny Stahl. I reside in Colorado Springs, 2430 North Tejon Street. I am a somatic trauma therapist and on the board for TheraPsych, which is a nonprofit to help fund psychedelic and natural medicine facilitation. So it's my intention to apply for licensure to facilitate natural medicine.
I have something written, if you'll allow me to read it. I'm a clinical
Yeah,
social.
sir, if you could be about 3 inches from the microphone, we'll hear you a little better.
Okay,
Yeah, if you move it closer, yeah. And this is being recorded also, so it's important.
okay. As I mentioned, my name's Scott DeWalt. I'm a licensed clinical social worker with a private mental health practice here in Manitou. I'm also the founder and executive director of a Colorado nonprofit that owns 32 Manitou Avenue, otherwise known as the Martin Place, as I've heard. We have 6 people on our board to include a medical doctor, an attorney, and 4 licensed therapists. I hold a certification as a psychedelic assisted therapy provider, and my 256-hour training included 2 4-day trips to Oregon for practicum. First, I'd like to thank you for taking into consideration the time, place, and manner of natural medicine healing centers in Manitou. As you may be aware, Colorado Springs is creating relatively strict buffers to the point of effectively banning them within city limits. I initially had a longer speech prepared for you, but it seems the 2 issues I was going to speak about have been removed or modified in Ordinance 1024, those being business hours and proximity to parks. I and many of my colleagues believe that 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. 7 days a week are sufficient hours to do business. Some of the questions I've received from Colorado Springs have been related to what the center might look like. Well, it looks like a yoga studio, essentially. It's a very nondescript building, and the place that I went to in Oregon was, it didn't have any signage on it. It was in the middle of Eugene, Oregon. And I guess. We recently were approved for a facade grant from the URA, and the work should be completed by next week. That is stucco to the outside of the building. I think everybody agrees that it wasn't the best looking building in town, and so we're happy to have it finished. I'm looking forward to working with you as well as the rest of city government, and I'm happy to take any and all questions that you might have.
Okay, thank you. And sir, the other gentleman, did you have further comments? Do you want to say anything? Okay, all right. We don't always do this during a public hearing, but I think it's nice of you to offer to answer questions. So council, this is a good opportunity to a little bit more about the business. Any questions or comments? Natalie, please.
This question isn't going to be shocking. How much does the average treatment cost that you're anticipating?
I was hoping you'd ask that. So there's a place in Oregon. It's running roughly between $3,000 and $4,000 actually, and that includes preparation, administration, and integration. It's like a three-part. It includes a lot of services, not just administration day. So I think the reason that the cost is so high is because licenses are expensive. I mean, we were lucky. We had a nonprofit. We were able to purchase the building, so we don't have mortgage overhead. But that's one of the reasons why it costs so much. And this is also not something that I have a therapy practice, and most other people have their own practices. And this is something that I don't plan on doing every single day. I mean, I hope to do maybe 3 a month.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Judith, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm really curious about the process, how long a treatment lasts on average, and if what that includes. Does it include a patient intake and a history, and then or is that a separate appointment, or is it all in one where the client comes in and you do your intake and your history, and then you will administer the treatment and then monitor? So just a little bit about the treatment itself. Thank you.
Sure. There's definitely an assessment process, a very thorough assessment process, because there are some people that aren't good candidates for this kind of healing. And that's a separate day. So you have an assessment day, and then you have preparation, which can be 2 to 3 sessions. And then administration is its own separate day.
And my next question is, I would assume that you have to carry liability insurance?
Absolutely.
And what does that run?
Recently, for my personal insurance, for my business, they are asking us now if we plan to work with psilocybin and or ketamine, and I already work with ketamine. So I mean, it increased my insurance, but not by a lot.
Mm-hmm. Judith, I just wondered, since you're a nurse, do you have any other questions that come to your mind that the rest of us might not miss because of our backgrounds are different?
No, just, I owned my own practice for years. And so, when we think about a $3,000 to $4,000, intake process, I'm assuming, obviously insurance isn't going to cover it. You have high liability insurance costs, and then the treatment is, it's my understanding it can be up to 4 hours, or what's an average treatment? So it's not like you can see a patient every 20 minutes. You've got to really be cognizant of the time it takes to see a client from beginning to end.
Yes, thank you, Counselor. This is why I was glad to see that you all increased the hours of operation, because typically it can take 3 to 5 hours. But some people, older adults and some people with certain conditions, they metabolize psilocybin at longer rates. And so they can be maybe up to 8 hours. And closing the doors at 5 and sending someone out into the public that is under the influence is a really bad idea.
And do you have to be a CPR or ACLS
Yes.
certified?
We will have to have, yes, basic,
Okay, so at least a level 2 CPR.
I think it is, yeah.
Okay.
It's called something else. It's not,
DLS.
that sounds right.
Now it's changed, but yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Julie?
Have you reviewed our ordinance?
Yes,
Are you happy with it?
yes.
And with respect, I'm just curious, with respect to the prohibition against getting too close to parks, as a clinician, do you see that the people in our parks will be endangered more by these patients than by any other human that might be walking around?
Absolutely not.
So there's no logic in your mind to like prohibiting it from being close to a park?
No,
I
in
mean, I
fact,
couldn't figure it out either, but.
well, I
apparently
assumed that
something.
it was because there's children at parks.
Yeah, but yeah.
Yeah,
So people who are done with their psilocybin treatment might be nicer to children than your average Joe. I mean, I don't get
Absolutely.
it. So I just didn't know if there was something like, I didn't know that, statistically people tend to get homicidal when they're 2 hours past their, effects or something when their trip is over or some weird thing.
right, right. That was a question I
such
had
thing.
for you all.
Yeah,
was-
no,
was
I have
why
no
the
idea
parks
what
was
the
in there.
parks or
Okay.
the school prohibition is, but I just didn't know if you, any
You know,
insight.
it's similar to Colorado Springs. They included substance treatment facilities in their buffer of 1 mile. And it just made no sense to me. I don't understand that. I mean, in fact, psilocybin is used for addiction in some cases. And so
It what?
it's used for addiction treatment in some cases. So that made no sense to me either.
Thank you.
Judith, I see your hand, but before we go to you, I do have a question for Mayor Pro Tem. Nancy, your background's in health, I think. I don't know if you have any thoughts or any questions and
No, and I was I'm not a clinician, so I have no comment. Thank you.
okay. All right, good. Judith, please.
So one more question. Thank you. So with regards to when the patient is considered stable enough to leave, what's the criteria for stability? And can the client leave of their own volition, or do they need to have someone to transport them?
So in the multiple sessions that I've had in Oregon with 20 other people, this was a very large group. It's based on whether it's not like an assessment that we give them. It's more, are they coherent? Are they making full sentences? Are they back to earth, I guess you could say. So there's no clinical assessment at that time. And then the second question you asked me, oh yes, absolutely not. You have to have a ride. I mean, we can't enforce that, but that's yes. Yes, it's exactly like a colonoscopy. Well, not exactly, but yes,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Okay. Council, anything more for these gentlemen? I guess not. Gentlemen, thank you. Appreciate the input.
Thank you very much.
Good. Okay. Anyone else? I'm guessing probably not. In light of, we had no one else contact us by email or anything on
No.
this? Okay, good. All right. Well, that being what it is, I will close the public comment portion. And we're back to deliberation. So council, if you have any further questions for planning and for the city clerk, this is the time. If not, we could go to a motion.
I move approval.
I'll second.
Okay, a motion and a second to approve. Any further discussion? Let's vote.
Motion carries unanimously.
Great, thank you. Okay, well, I guess Manitou is take the lead on this in a certain way. Okay, the Wild West, yeah. Great. Next item is to receive or act on council correspondence. Does anybody have anything? Mr. Shada?
I know that Denise is somewhat hesitant about how much PR we're going to do, but given that the press is only here, over the weekend, we had this amazing amount of graffiti that was up around Spring Street in Ruxton. And I went up today at noontime, and the city must have had some amazing magic wand to remove all this stuff. There's a little bit left on the Inman Trail sign, and I'm assuming it's probably the sensitivity of what that glass or plexiglass material is on that map as to why they didn't apply their magic solution or whatever. But it was a pretty horrible amount. And I just want to say that, you know, staff or the magic wand, whoever cleaned it all up, you know, it was amazing, because it was very depressing to go up and see how much they had done. Thank you.
Good. Okay, thank you. Judith?
Thank you, Mayor. I had a resident send me a text today stating that the Wichita parking lot bathrooms were going to be closed permanently. And I wasn't aware of that, or I missed the memo. And anyway, this individual was concerned about that. If you could speak to that, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Denise, would you like to respond to that, please?
You bet. The bathrooms at the Wichita lot belongs to the Metro District. And they're the ones that own it, and they do it for the bid downtown, the Business Improvement District. So they have chosen at this point not to have it open. We as a city did remember, I think you might remember, we went ahead and did the ADA for that bathroom for them and paid for that because we felt that was important to have an ADA bathroom, but we do not have an agreement to do any type of cleaning of that bathroom or any of that after January 1. So they have broken, or not broken, we have agreed they're going off and they're going to get their own contracts for enforcements and for the bathrooms and all of that. So I don't know when that's going to reopen. So I would encourage people to reach out to the Metro District because they're the ones that own that bathroom.
That was my second question. This resident was very upset and had questions I couldn't answer about, you know, what potential impact that might have on the downtown area, especially, but the city writ large.
Yeah. And what days does the Metro District meet?
The third Wednesdays of the month.
So it's
Or-
coming up, so they could.
Second Wednesday, sorry.
Second, and
Yeah.
we will be hosting the last one in December. Are we hosting that?
It's already passed.
Oh, sorry, you're right. So January, they will have to post their own meetings and they have to put out where it's being and how to, all of that. So we don't know how that's going to happen, but that will be their responsibility starting January 1.
Thank you. Mr. Shada?
So I know there's residents and businesses and whatnot that have city parking permits in that lot. Does that mean at the first of the year, those are void, or what, where we stand on that?
My understanding, but I better verify that. I don't want to make that public. So let me just verify that and send it. And then we'll also put that in a press release so everybody's aware.
So it's quite possible, or most likely, shall we say, at the first of the year, that people will have to do business with them, not us, for those parking arrangements.
I don't want to make that statement. Let me see. We may have an agreement that you purchase it through us and then we pay them for that parking.
Okay.
So I just want to
we
verify.
haven't resolved that.
I think it has, but I'm not aware of it. So let me get the
Okay,
answer.
okay, thank you.
Good. Thank you. Anybody else? I will mention that on Friday, Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments hosted a meet your legislator get together, a meeting, and we had, I think, 4 or 5 legislators, including Senator-elect Mark Snyder. They kind of gave us their take on how they saw the upcoming State House season going. We shared some ideas. It looks like it's going to be vigorous, contentious, a little bit of a circus. If anyone would be interested, there is Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments has a legislative committee meeting. It's usually every other week on a Monday morning, so I could get that information if anybody's interested. It's typically a Zoom, it's a hybrid meeting. There's a Zoom component, so you don't have to travel. I think that's all I've got. Okay, Denise,
Yeah, I do want to recognize the individuals that worked on the graffiti, and that was our neighborhood services and our janitorial service. So they've done a great job with that. And you approved a purchase of a power washing machine, whatever they're called, sorry. And that is what they were able to use. It's very high powerful, and they use some additional chemicals to make sure that they got it off. So due to your purchase, we didn't, or your approval, we didn't have to contract that out. So thank you. I also want to mention they also graffitied all the parking signs all the way down pretty much Ruxton. So we're going to have to work and see if we can get that off or replace them. So we're working on that next.
So I have one other question. The mailboxes for the residents that are in that pedestal at Spring Street, did we have to hold off treating that because there might have been mail in those boxes? I did notice that we cleaned up the supporting thing, but the face of those are still, that's the only thing that's left.
Okay,
At
I'll
noon.
check. It
Thank
could
you.
be that we need approval. I don't know, but let me look.
Well,
for that.
it looks like to me,
Yeah.
we cleaned up the
Yeah.
base.
Yeah.
It's sort of not obvious if you were standing because the mailboxes are kind of a light gray and the stuff they tagged it with was sort of kind of a whitish color. And so I didn't notice it until I walked all the way up to the mailboxes. But it seems like to me that would be another nice thing to really just finish that job. And I thought maybe because of the chemicals or whatever that we were sensitive to what the contents were. Thank you.
Excuse me, Julie?
Denise and I were talking about this just briefly before the meeting started, but I would really like us to have an SOP, I guess you'd call it, that anytime there's graffiti noticed in town, that before it gets washed or scrubbed off, that the city take pictures and send it to the Colorado Springs Police Department gang unit, which coordinates also with the sheriff's department. And they have a gang unit and they have a special name for it that I forget right now. But they keep track of these things because they'll know, oh, that's the taggers, that's the gang from Venezuela that's been in town, or that's, whoever it is. I just think it's important for us to share that information with the other partnership nearby entities that are also trying to eradicate the problem. So that's my suggestion.
Okay. We'll,
May I ask Denise a
go-
question?
yeah, go ahead, Julie. Or, excuse me, Judith, I'm sorry.
Would you provide city council with the amount that we paid to remodel the Wichita bathrooms to make them ADA compliant?
You bet. I'll get that to you.
Thank you.
In the next, yeah. So with that, let me just, before I say, yes, let's do an SOP, let me talk to the police chief and see exactly how we work this agreement and what we're already doing. And then I'll let council know from there, if that's okay.
Okay, great, thank you. Anything else, Denise?
Yeah, just a couple of things. And this time, I think the date is right. Of course, I want to wish everybody a happy holiday. But one thing that I was reminded this week is the amount of work that each and every one of you put out there and the sometimes challenges that you have. And I don't think you always get the credit. And I think the public forgets to say thank you for your service. And so I just wanted to put that it was a reminder to me this week that I think is important to say to all public servants, and especially elected officials, because it's not always the easiest job. So thank you. And on behalf of all the community, I say thank you. And Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays.
Okay, we appreciate that. Thank you. Oh, and I should have mentioned also that our next council meeting will be January the 7th. So next week, Christmas Eve, and the week after that, New Year's Eve, we're off. So I hope you all have a chance to relax and have some fun.
Mayor, did you want to mention that on the 7th, we're going to have a work session?
Yeah, I'm sorry, on the 7th, which is, it will start out, it'll be a regular session. I mean, typically we don't have a whole lot to do that first meeting of the year. We'll make our liaison assignments and so forth, a few things like that. But then we will have a work session. We need to discuss the green area at the Dillon parking lot, what we want to do with that, because we have some time constraints that if we can make a decision, that would be helpful. We'll see how that goes. All right. Okay. Well, that takes us,
Can I ask so that'll be just a work session or a hybrid?
it'll be a hybrid. There's not, I think my guess is the regular portion of the meeting will take us about half an hour, and then we'll get into a work session. But we have some, I think, some opportunities if we can make up our mind. If not, we'll carry it on. Okay, so the next item of business we need to have an executive session. We really have 4 things to do, it being evaluation time. So let me go ahead and read that, and then I'll seek a motion to go into executive session. An executive session to discuss a personnel matter regarding an employee pursuant to 5.1A of the Manitou Springs Municipal Charter. Actually have 4 topics, 4 sessions. The first session will concern the annual performance review of the city administrator. The second will be the annual performance review of the finance director. The third with the performance review of the chief of police. And the fourth, the performance review of the city clerk. And the last 3 are conducted by the city administrator. And then she brings that to us as we have done in the past. So can I get a motion? Okay, and a second. I'm sorry, do we have a second?